Salutations, my Legion of Doom. This is your Time Lord wannabe, the Brainstormer Pop Culture. So, I'm keeping my promise in making this video series, and we'll start with Superman, obviously, because he basically started everything for DC Comics. Also, he's one of my favorite superheroes. And keep in mind, I am borrowing a lot from Man of Steel, but I am putting my own spin on it. Okay? Also, I'm just giving like a general overview of this movie. I'm not going to go too in-depth. It's not like a script. Alright, so we start with the opening, which is a brief retelling of the Doom Planet, more specifically on the House of El, where it's two parents, Mon-El and Laura, say a tearful goodbye to their infant son as they send him off-world via a rocket. And then we fast forward to 25 years later, the present, in Metropolis, where a bumbling Clark Kent starts his job at the Daily Planet. Here he is partner assigned a story with veteran journalist Lois Lane and rookie photographer Jimmy Olsen. Their case: investigate the Superman. So basically we build up the friendship between Clark and Jimmy while showing chemistry between Clark and Lois. And so as they're beginning this story, we have a small montage of people giving stories of them encountering the Superman. So the first one we have is a girl trying to commit suicide by jumping, but is stopped by Superman, who is a shadowy figure at this moment. We only see like the red S on his symbol. Another is a construction worker who nearly dies via falling girders, but is saved by a red and blue blur. And the last one is a boy whose cat is stuck in a tree, but a red cape ascends from the sky, grabs the cat, and gives it back to him. After that, we kind of going a little bit further down the line of the kind of movie, and we have Clark become the Superman. But it's like a makeshift homemade costume, probably the one you'll be seeing in the video right now. Also, throughout all of this, we show Clark calling home, talking to Mom and Pa Kent, especially showing him and his dad talking a lot. And how I was going to do the end of the first act would end with Clark hearing his father having a heart attack. So, in a panic, Clark flies like super fast from the point where he to the point where he catches on fire, screaming, "I can save him! I can save everyone!" You know, as soon as Clark gets there, his father dies, and Clark holds his body in his arms. The second act shows Clark and his mother having the funeral for his father. Clark is obviously shell-shocked. He feels absolutely empty and isolated. We then have the slow montage of Clark and Martha burying Jonathan. Then we cut to the Kent farm, specifically the barn cellar, where Clark stands in front of the rocket he came in. We didn't have a flashback. Specifically, the bus scene from Man of Steel. It goes the same way, the school bus swerves off the bridge, sinks in the river. Young Clark immediately springs into action, lifting it up out of the water. After that, we see Clark and John driving back, stopping right at the Kent farm entrance. John turns to him and just stares at him. Clark responds with, "I couldn't just let them die." John puts a hand on Clark's shoulder and says, "I'm proud of you for that." Clark, he responds with, "So you aren't mad?" And John he just smiles. "For saving lives. No, never hesitate to save people, Clark." And Clark nods. John nods back. They drive to the house. As they get out, John stops him again. Clark, truth is, I'm scared for you. People always hate what's different. I'm terrified that when the world sees you, they'll shun you. But I also know that when you stand tall and show us not what we are, but what we'll be, it's going to be something. Now I know this seems like I'm asking a lot, Clark, but all I really want from you is to be a good man, okay? And Clark says, okay. Yes. And then we cut back to the present. We have Clark's thoughts being interrupted by Martha. Clark says he was thinking of the moment his father told him to be the Superman. Martha brings him close to the pod and tells him how, when they found him, that it was John who immediately wanted to keep him, seeing Clark as a child who needed a home. And, the scene was really meant to hammer in the sadness and loss of Clark's father, and it's amidst the good and compassion that has shaped Clark. After all of this, Clark then brushes his hand over the rocket, but finds something happening. A compartment in the cradle Clark once inhabited opens, revealing a clear crystal. Clark grabs the crystal, and it starts to glow. Fear it's a bomb, Clark flies away, fast, and we transition to the North Pole, where Clark lands with the crystal glowing even more intensely. So Clark chucks it like a baseball. Where it lands, it slowly sinks to the ground. After 30 seconds, giant crystals start to form, until eventually becoming the Fortress of Solitude. So Clark enters the fortress and activates a series of crystals, and we see Jor-El telling him everything. Tells birth parents, Krypton, and more importantly why he was sent to Earth. The AI of Jor-El offers Clark the suit, but Clark refuses, saying he doesn't deserve it because he couldn't save one person. That one person that mattered most to him. So, Clark leaves. He heads back to Metropolis, trying to live as Clark Kent, mild-mannered, klutzy reporter. However, this doesn't stay permanent because a single Kryptonian ship appears on the moon of Earth. From there, we get a message from General Zod saying that how he and two other Kryptonians, Feora and Non, are the last of their species, Kryptonians. They say they tracked the emission from an escape pod which contained a child of the dead planet, saying the child has been here for 2 decades. This causes Clark to reveal himself as the Superman to the world. And he's wearing the homemade costume. So he meets in the center of Metropolis, where the Kryptonians have parked their ship. However, the three seem off because through the internet and stuff, through intelligence gathering, they study the history of humanity and know the horrible nature of humanity. And so through a pragmatic choice, Zod states that on Krypton he had been able to bring peace to the planet, saying that with the power they have now and the advanced technology they have, they could save Earth from itself. Clark tries to explain that that's not right, that humanity can learn and grow, that humanity has much to offer them. But the three aren't buying that. Clark, again, tries to appeal with them, hoping diplomacy can work. But it doesn't, however, and a slugfest happens. Except Clark is really on the defensive, just trying to get the three away from the city. Zod, Feora, and Non throw cars and trucks and bystanders. Clark's catching them left and right while also shielding and moving people away from falling debris. There still is a massive amount of property damage, but people are otherwise unharmed. However, this changes when Non flings Clark into a building, which starts collapsing. Clark tries to hold up that building, but Zod flies into him, going through the other side of the building, which in turn causes the building to collapse. And Clark is sent down onto the street, and we see a building horrifically and slowly falling. And this sends Clark into a rage. He tosses Zod off him, then Non and Pharaoh try to rush him, but Clark grabs them both and flings them into the sky, where they leave Earth's atmosphere and crash onto the moon. Zod, obviously enraged by this change of events, he tries to ram Clark, which sends him flying through the sky, eventually through into the train station. Zod just hammers on Clark, leaving Clark bruised and bloodied. And for a brief moment, Zod is hit with a rock, and we rotate the camera to see a child had thrown. The child was the same boy whose cat was stuck in a tree, but Clark saved it. The boy's father grabs him and begins running back towards the boy's mother and siblings. Zod looks back to Clark, who is struggling to stand up, and Zod turns his attention back to the fleeing family. As he slowly walks towards them, he says to Clark, "If you love these insects so much, Kal-El, then you can mourn for them." While he says this, his eyes glow red. He fires the laser, his heat vision, at the family, with Clark trying to rush to shield them. But with his injuries, Clark falls halfway there and has to watch as family is burnt to a crisp. Again, this enrages Clark, made him muster up enough strength to attack Zod, beating the Kryptonian general to a pulp. As Clark raises his fist one more time to finish it, he hears Jonathan's words, "All I really want from you is to be a good man." This makes Clark grab Zod and rockets them both out towards the moon. On the way, Clark crashes through the Kryptonian ship, which causes it to fall onto Metropolis Square. Now we're on the moon. Clark crashes near the place where he had thrown Non and Feora. He grabs all three and flings them farther out, away from Earth, maybe towards Mars. So after all that, Clark descends back down to the battle-torn Metropolis. People around him start booing and throwing things at him. Clark doesn't pay attention to it. He just starts picking up rubble. After a minute, he shows that people are still alive in the destruction. After some time, more people start joining in to help. And cut to black. So, what do you think? Let me know, and in brightest day and blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Until next time, my Legion.